Right, I'm here with Lyndon Hugh Christophers, born in 1949, originated from England, and I've known him for over 15 years. I've come to live in his residence, and I just thought I'd ask him a few questions about his trip from England, where he's come to today and where he is today, and some of the professions or occupations that he's had along that time that have led him to be where he is today, and what his mission is. All right, I'll leave it over to you, Lyndon. Tell us about when you came from England.
Thank you, Kim. I was born in London in 1949, and I have no memory of England whatsoever, because by the time we left, I think Liverpool or somewhere like that, on the ship to come to Australia, I was under 2 years old. And we travelled on the ship, which was called the Somersetshire. There was the Devonsetshire and the Somersetshire, which were in World War II troop carriers. And after the war, they became ships to bring people to either Australia, Canada, America, or South Africa, which I thought, or Zimbabwe, or whatever it is today. Anyway, I have no memory of that, except I've been told that when we arrived in Australia on the 6th of March 1951, which was my birthday, apparently at Fremantle, there was a big party on board ship.
Yeah.
And everyone said, I thought it was for me.
Who was it for?
It was for the captain of the ship, who was born on the 6th of March.
Okay.
And we happened to pull into Fremantle Port before the ship came round to Melbourne and Sydney. And I thought, wow, at 2 years old,
all for you.
Pretty important. Anyway, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't know. Anyway, so we that's where we were from. My mum lived. She wasn't. I think she was born in Cardiff, in Wales. My dad came from Cornwall on the south coast. My mum's parents were apparently from the Midlands. And the thing I always remember about Mum is she tells me her dad, when she was born in 1915, had a Morgan three-wheeler motor car, which had a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine projecting it across, I don't know whether you can call them roads in England in those days. Trails or whatever they were. And she actually learnt in her holidays, when her dad would take her in the Morgan, she learnt to drive the Morgan. So by the time she was 10 or 11, she was quite capable of actually driving a motor car.
Cool.
So my parents were, in my mind, one of the most important influences in my life.
Okay. And you've moved into the Queensland area straight away, or?
We came up from, we got off the boat in Sydney, and I don't remember any of this, but we apparently came up on the train up to, I don't know what the name of the place was, because there used to be a different gauge railway in New South Wales to Queensland.
Oh, yeah. Could run on the same track.
Yeah, so you couldn't run on the same track. So you had to get off the track in the New South Wales. I'm thinking Kyogle, but that's not right. Anyway, it's just south of the border, and get on another train and come up to Brisbane. And then we got off that train, and then we hopped onto a freight train and went up to what was called a rail stop. It wasn't a station. it was a rail stop. So if you needed to get out there, you had to let the guard know so he could get the driver to pull up so you could get out. And apparently we got out at this rail stop near Kingaroy, I'll say, but it was called Tingura.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever seen Tingura, although I met someone the other day, only about 3 or 4 months ago, who actually was born in Tingura.
Okay.
So how the fuck does that happen? Sorry.
It sounds like in the outback somewhere for sure.
Something is weird, but anyway. So we waited there, and it was a rail stop, so there was no houses, there was no station master, there was no nothing. We apparently stayed there for about 2 hours until the farmer, who was our sponsor, arrived in his truck to take us to the farm. And the farm, I think something like, it was 42 miles from Tingura to the farm gate.
Okay. By tractors, it's a fair old track, isn't it?
Fair old track. So anyway, so we went there and stayed there. And then my dad, who was a printer by trade, he got offered a job up at Bundaberg. Mm-hmm. And he went on his own. Mm-hmm. And we were supposed to move up there, and I don't know if we did or didn't, mm-hmm. but in the end, the job didn't amount to whatever was required or Dad wanted, and we moved back to Brisbane, and we moved to a suburb called Hemmant.
Okay. And
we lived in Hemmant. I think the first house we lived in, we were there for about probably 2 to 3 years, because I actually started school when we were in the first house, primary school. And then Mum and Dad bought another house further down the road, and we moved in there where I grew up, and I stayed until I was about, I think probably about 20, 21. Okay. So that was the main area we lived in. Hemmant was like a rural community, and Hemmant has a sorry.
Let's come forward.
Oh, sorry. Hemmant has a name which is from the German, because the people who lived at Hemmant were mainly German immigrants who came to Australia after World War One.
Okay.
And there were other people, Irish people, and English people, and Dutch people, and whatever else. But mainly, most of the people in Hemmant were of German extraction. And I guess they probably had a fair influence on the way I looked at life. They were, if I had to describe them, I'd say very simple people.
Okay.
This
is when we were about 20.
Oh, this is when I was about. We moved into the house when I was under 6, and lived there. And there were a lot of dairies. There was 3 or 4 dairies there. When I think the one of the families, I think, were called the Herbsts, and then there was the Bernsts, and then there was Mr. Pender, who had he was obviously English or Irish or whatever. He had about 400 or 500 dairy cattle, whereas the other people only had like 150 or 250 cattle. But there were about 3 dairies there that were supplying most of the milk to Brisbane.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
From about 20, then you sort of went out into your own and.
Well, when we were about 20, we moved to Birkdale, and the the day we actually moved from Hemmant to Birkdale was the day the bridge was opened on Rickett Road.
Yeah. Do you class this is Wellington Point, so Birkdale is actually not far from here, isn't it?
No, it's just another
5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, less than 5.
Yeah.
Virtually next door, you know.
Yeah.
And so we moved there, and we lived there for 2 or 3 years, and then I got offered one of my bosses saw something in me, I believe, and he asked me whether I was interested in a job that was going in Malaysia, or it used to be called Malaya, but it was Malaysia because it was a newfound democratic country over in the Far East. And
what was that?
That was as a paymaster. I was in the finance area, and he asked me if I wanted to go over. You know, he couldn't actually give me the job, but he said, was I interested, because he'd already been there.
Yep.
And he knew that what they wanted was, this is my opinion now, good, responsible people who could be trusted, not to take bribes, not to do the wrong thing, and work for the Australian government overseas. And through one way or another, I actually, even though the job was already filled, when he rang them, he said to the fellow who said the job's already filled, he said, you will reopen it.
Okay, so he got you in.
He got me an interview.
Yeah.
And I went and did the interview, which meant I had to spend 2 days, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, working through the books to look at all the overseas regulations and things, which I knew nothing about. And I finally got on a plane and went to Canberra on the Monday morning, and I got grilled by these people who had already picked someone. And they were determined that I wasn't going to get it. And I came back, and the boss said to me, how do you think you went? And I said, I think I went crap. I think I went crap. These guys were bashing me, you know. And he went, okay, we'll see. The next day, he said, guess what? You're going to Malaya.
You got it.
I got it. I went, holy crap.
How'd that happen?
How did that happen? Well, obviously he had some influence, you know, and
seen something in you.
And they saw something in me, and these guys went, holy crap, this bloke is like 10 times better than than the other applicants.
Must have been for them to sort of change someone that already picked.
They'd already picked someone. You know, they'd already set someone up for it. So I went to Malaya for 3 years. Well, I was supposed to go for 2. Okay. Because the postings were only ever 2 years.
And you stayed a whole another year.
I stayed 3. And partly because the war in Vietnam was going on. And we, in all that time, I was probably working on average 6 days a week, most weeks, but occasionally getting only 5 days a week. Because they never ever provide enough people so you can go away on holidays or anything like that. And
what did you take out of this job? Like, what was the experience you got from it?
My experience, Kim, was that I got to work with a incredible group of people from different spheres of life. I mean, the people who I had working before me, and I had a boss above me, and I had a big boss above him. And the Air Commodore was in charge of the base, and I was responsible to everybody. But what I really got out of it was that working with a diverse group of people in a area which became a war zone.
Okay.
It did.
Yeah.
When North Vietnam was marching down through the peninsula into South Vietnam, and eventually they took Saigon. But in the meantime, we had helicopters which were shot out of the air by surface-to-air missiles.
Okay.
We had incursions into the base with rifles.
Yeah.
We had to have a extra not a battalion, a company of. We had, instead of one company of soldiers coming up from Townsville or
just to secure it for you.
Yeah, they had to have two.
Yeah.
And they were, and plus we had all our military police, etc., etc. Plus we had the Malaysian defence force people, and it was a big base. I mean, we had, I think, four squadrons up in Malaya.
Yep.
In Butterworth, yeah.
Jeez. And so you're saying there was an overwhelming sense of military presence there.
Oh, mate, this was but it was mainly Air Force. You see, it was mainly Air Force, and I've in my time found the Air Force probably the best people to deal with.
Okay.
The reason I think that is I often reflect. You see, the Navy is the senior service in the military, or but they're very fixed in what they're allowed to do and what they can say and whatever. And I always relate to Admiral Nelson, who had one blind eye.
Yeah.
And he put his hand over the other eye and said, "I see no enemy. I see no problem." So you can be blind, and I'm not saying all naval people are stupid, but I'm saying
a little bit ignorant, maybe?
Well, to me, I don't know whether ignorant's the right word, but they're inducted into certain people like that level of, don't make a decision.
Yeah, very mechanical.
Yeah, very mechanical. Just do what you're told, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we can go to the army. And I always think of into Balaclava, the 500 road to Bathsheba.
Okay.
And when they got there, there was only 2 horsemen left. Oh, yeah. Now, we celebrate that as a victory because, and 498 people were killed and all their horses were killed. Now, sorry, I go, hang on, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's in World War II, World War One, over the trenches, into the Gatling guns. Go the troops.
Yeah.
And you have to do it because you're a soldier.
Yeah.
And my ancestors are soldiers, by the way.
Okay.
They are. But then I worked with the Air Force, and the difference there was someone would order, because the Air Force was an arm of the Army originally.
Yeah.
So you'd have an Army general would say, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go in and you're going to attack them, and you're going to, the Air Force guys would say, well, once we're off the ground, he can't fucking tell us what to do because we're flying round up in the air, you know?
Yeah.
And they go, well, instead of going into the Gatling guns or into the, you know,
go around it.
Bofors, we go around the back and we'll shoot them up the arse. And that made much more sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's the difference I found in all the services. And anyway, so that was my, I think, my experience with the military. And I love them all.
Yeah.
I do.
That's good. Good.
I do, because I can see.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, you then came to Canberra. My understanding of your story is that you sort of came to Canberra at a certain time as well.
I did, but between that, we had 3 years in Malaya. We had the Vietnam fell. It was a pretty tense time. Our families were supposed to be evacuated, but because Saigon fell, the planes that would take our families back to Australia were sent in to bring out embassy staff from Australia, and not Americans, because the Americans had all their own planes, Canadians, French, and so on. And so all of our people were supposed to come home, or my wife, my kids, and all the other people, because there were like 5,000. There were 5,000 Australian people
working over there,
working on the base.
Yeah.
Majority of them military.
Okay.
Anyway, so after that we came home and we built a house in Birkdale, and we'd only moved in less than 3 months, and I applied for a job in Port Moresby.
Okay.
So, which I got, and again, hard work, hard yakka.
Yeah.
You know, because someone up there thought that they should have got the job.
Yeah.
And there's this bloke from Brisbane.
Yeah.
And he got it.
Yeah.
So you walk into an environment where, you know, you got people willing to
target on your back type situation.
Target on your back and don't want to help you.
Yeah.
But the 4 years we had in New Guinea were nowhere near as interesting as the 3 years we had in Malaysia. But again, part of my development.
Okay.
And understanding of a different culture.
Yep.
And in New Guinea, there's probably 300 to 700 different tribal groups that live there, and some of them can get on with each other.
Some can't, obviously.
And others have fucking fought for over 1,000 years, and they never will.
Yeah.
Anyway. But I found that interesting to see all the different types of people. And, you know, I mean, even amongst the expatriates who were there, I mean, we had, you know, people who were from all areas. I mean, because Papua New Guinea was Dutch New Guinea was what we occupied, or we looked after. And then German New Guinea was the north side. And of course, there were a lot of people there who were associated with the World War One, German Democratic, War, and then in World War Two, again, and then the Japanese coming and trying to take over, and it's a pretty fractious type of place. It really is, but when you get a mix of people like that.
Yeah,
I find it gives you an interesting perspective into how different groups of people think or work or interact or whatever.
See the world, how they see the world.
Yeah, and you can, because I come from London to Australia to Brisbane, and live in a predominantly white community. I I see things from one perspective, but you've got all these other people and they see things
differently,
quite differently, and I find it intriguing.
It is, and it's intriguing to me because some of this I haven't heard from you, and I've known you for a while, and it now sort of explains a little bit why you see things the way you do sometimes, and it is very broad. I often can't grip with how sometimes you have a very broad view on certain things, and I'm like, I myself think that I'm broad, but from what you've now just described, it now explains why you're even broader.
So, I hope so. I hope it does, but I don't think I'm always right.
No, and we have that conversation quite a bit. Can you bring me to when you did come to Canberra? Because
well, after we left New Guinea, I was up in New Guinea for 4 years, and that was working in what was called a joint force headquarters. And basically I was the I don't know if you'd call me the financial controller. I had a boss who was really the financial controller, but I was in charge of the finance office and, looked after paying all the bills and all that sort of thing. I had a paymaster that worked for me, and I had 4 or 5 Australian clerks, and so I worked up there, and then they, in the wisdom of the Australian government, they decided that they had too many people in overseas posts, and they wanted to reduce the number of people, and they actually closed us down effectively. And it was I can say that was the most tremendous place at that stage that I'd ever worked, because sometimes you had a naval admiral, or not an admiral, naval captain, right? As in, captain of a big ship or you had an air commodore, or you had a army general in charge.
A really big personality there,
and it was always changing, and it just made me realise that I guess if you have the ability to be open, and you might think, well, hang on, this system we've got going is really the best that I've ever seen. But then you get a naval captain comes in and he says, it's going to change. And so you go through 12 months of fractious bloody craziness while he tries to change everything to the Navy way.
And you've got to be flexible.
You've got to be flexible. But the thing is, what actually happened in the long run, the troops finally convinced him, yes, you are right, that is the way we do it in the Navy. However, we have been working with the Air Force and the Army for the last 5 years, and we've got this system which is better.
Yeah.
And eventually he goes, puts his hand over the wrong eye and says, I see no problem here. Anyway, that's not true, because in the end, with the rollover between Army, Navy and Air Force, the place actually ran extremely well. And I realised just how much, that as a civilian in charge of finances, you had to be accommodating to the senior people, but you also had to make sure that what you did was in accordance with the rules and conventions of the Australian government.
Okay.
So that to me was, it's a balance.
Bit of a juggle too. Yeah.
It's a bit of a juggle. So then we went to Hobart.
Okay.
Didn't know that?
Yeah, I remembered a bit there. For a while I thought you were originally from Tasmania.
Oh, no, I've only got one head.
Come on.
I had the other two removed.
Okay. Tell me about Tasmania, and then
Just quickly, yeah. Look, Tasmania was interesting because I was the financial controller for the whole defence in Tasmania. Now, I was about, 30, around about 30.
Yeah.
Now, there was no way in any other lifetime that I could ever become a financial controller of defence in any state or territory, ever.
Yeah.
I'd have to be, 85.
Yeah.
Lots
more experience.
Yeah, and I didn't have a degree.
Yeah.
And of course, my boss said, you better get a degree. Anyway, so I did 2 years in Tassie. I liked the people. I liked the country. I'd never lived there. It was too friggin' cold. It was horrible. I could not get warm.
Yep.
I could not go onto a squash court and actually sweat.
Yep. It's just too cold.
I was playing A3 squash, right, in New Guinea, and I could play A1, but at number 3. I was never A1. And I went down to Tassie and I couldn't believe it. You go from New Guinea where you walk onto court and you have wristbands, headbands, ankle bands, and towels all over the floor. To Tasmania, you don't sweat.
At all, probably.
You don't sweat at all.
Yeah.
No matter how hard you play. And my boss down there, he was very fit. He was probably in his late 50s or something. He was extremely fit. I used to go and watch him play against the army trainer, whatever he is, for all of the army people in I don't know, instructor or trainer. And he'd play a game and I'd watch him. And I'd go, holy shit, that's so good. But I could play against him and I didn't sweat. And in the end, I always say, I prayed to God, please get me out of here. I am so cold. Every day of my life, I'm so cold.
Yeah.
Put me in the middle of the Simpson Desert.
You'll be fine there.
No water. In the middle of summer. I will go 30 days. I'll go 40 days. I'll go 100 days without water. Just get me out of here.
Yeah, pretty bad for you.
Oh, I just found it was just, from a temperature point of view, it was just miserable. I mean, we had good experiences down there, and my kids did enjoy it. Anyway, we left there, and I got a job in Canberra. Moved into I guess an area of. They were trying to utilise my experience, particularly my overseas experience and so on. So it was basically in a policy development area.
Okay.
Now, some of the things we had to do was there were a few cases around where people don't necessarily always do the right thing by the Commonwealth government, and they actually steal.
Really?
Oh, it's amazing. I can't believe why they do that, because they always say to people, if you're going to steal from anybody, don't steal from the Commonwealth government, because they don't care if you only stole $50 worth of fucking something, right? You will go to jail. That's the policy.
Yeah.
There is no, it was only $50, or it was only, half a carcass of, beef, or,
Don't steal from them.
Don't steal from them, because their principle basically is, if you steal from us, you're stealing from the people of Australia.
Yeah.
And if you're stealing from the people of Australia, you're going to go to jail. They don't care if they only put you in jail for one day.
Yeah.
But you'll go to jail.
All right. Okay.
You'll have a, anyway. So I went to Canberra and, again, for some reason, my big boss, not my first boss or my second boss, saw something in me. And he kept giving me these assignments. I'd get a call from my two-up boss, right? He'd say, "Big boss wants to see you, and he wants to see you now." I go, "Oh fuck, what have I done?" I go and see him, and he was the first assistant secretary, and I really got on well with him over time. But he'd say, "Got this project I want you to take on. This is the situation. This is the broad, what do you call it? Are you happy to take it on?" I go, "Well, I couldn't do it on my own, sir. I don't have that level of skill. I don't have that particular area of expertise, so I'll be honest." And he'd say, "Well, that's all right. What we'll do is you tell me how many people you need, how many directors, how many specialists in finance or whatever in that area. How many people do you need? Because I want this resolved in 4 weeks."
Yeah, how's that going to happen?
And I'm just about falling off my chair, and I'm going,
4 weeks.
"You got to be kidding!"
Yeah.
He said, "But just go away, think about it. Tell me if you're going to do it in 4 weeks. How many people do you need? What level are they at? And what level of expertise do you need?" Because
What was
I was the person who was the marionette,
make things happen?
Yeah. I wasn't the person making the decisions. I wasn't the person that had the degree in commerce. I wasn't the person that had the degree in banking or whatever else. And for some reason, he kept doing it. And of course, at the same time, I was trying to go to university to get my commerce degree.
Okay, yeah. So you were trying to...
I was enrolled, and I was going to uni part-time. And I was acting director.
Okay.
I was an acting director, not an actual director, but I was an acting director. And he'd keep doing this to me, and I'd say, "Sir, why are you doing this? Don't you realise the pressure you're putting on me?" He said, "Yeah, I do." But he said, "If I ask you to do it, if I give it to the Billy Blogs over there, right? I won't say his name's Billy Blogs, but he said, he'll tell me he can do it. And in 4 weeks' time, he'll come back and say,
couldn't do it.
Sorry, couldn't do it." He said, "If you tell me you can do it," he said, "I'm convinced that you'll do it, or you'll come back to me in 1 week's time and say why you can't do it, and then we'll look at reevaluating." I went, holy shit. And it was the most horrendous time for me, because it put heaps of pressure on me, but I don't know.
You took a lot out of it?
I took a fantastic amount out of it, because in the end, I had about 4 or 5 of these things. I think I had one which was a $1.6 billion. This is back in 1990. Proposal that had to go to cabinet.
So you're dealing with lots of moolah.
Big, lots of responsibility. And I could walk into his office at any time and say, "Boss, I really need to talk to you now." And he'd say, "Out," to the other people. Because he'd given me this job to do, like the 1.6 billion. It was crazy. it was, I think we were 3 months or 3.5 months, and we had to get this thing through cabinet. And had the Defence Housing Authority were on our backs because they were being backed by Macquarie Bank.
Yeah.
Right, big bucks. And in the end, we got it to cabinet, and of course, Finance and Treasury disagreed with some of our recommendations. That's fine.
Yeah.
You know, you
Can't be perfect.
You put up option 1, option 2, and option 3, and you say we prefer option 2 or option 3, and they go no, and they choose another one. That's the prerogative of government.
But you learnt what you were made of by going through all that. I take it, what you're capable of, and
Well, it was hard work. It was hard yakka. That's all I can say. Yeah. Toughest fucking shit I've ever put. Well, anything tougher was actually getting my degree.
Okay.
At the same time as I'm trying to do that,
yeah, study and keep.
I'm trying to keep up with studying. Plus, I've got 4 kids at home.
Yeah.
And you know, and I'm trying to be a father. I'm trying to be a partner to my good wife, and I'm trying to be involved in the kids' development, their education, their the times when they've got things on at school. You know, going to whether it be a cross country run or I couldn't get to most of them. I couldn't.
Yeah, too much responsibility.
And there was just too much going on. And in some ways, look, I don't want to change anything I've ever done in my life, and I mean that.
Yeah.
Because everything I did led me to where I got to. And I'll tell you, for example, I was up here in Brisbane, probably I came back here in 2004, 2005, after I left Defence in round about 1999, and I went to drive. Well, I drove limousines for about 18 months, and then I drove for Parliament, and I drove people like Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Albo.
Albanese?
Yeah, he's a nice bloke. And people like Bronwyn Bishop, the Treasurer, Peter Costello, fantastic bloke, fantastic bloke. And other shits that I know, like, I shouldn't mention them on TV, but there were some terrible people that weren't interested in looking after people in Australia. They were just looking after themselves. Yeah. And you see that in life, and that's part and parcel. But from my point of view, it's all part of where you get to. Anyway, came up here, and I guess I've been up here maybe 5 or 6 years, and I've worked for Comcar for 6 years, maybe a bit more, and I was up here 5 or 6 years, and I get a phone call from my old boss, the one we did the $1.6 billion proposal.
Yep.
He goes, Lyndon. I go, holy crap. Where'd you get my number from? He said, we know where you are. Anyway, he said to me, got a problem. He was acting Secretary of Department, by the way.
Yeah.
And he said, I've got a problem that Finance and Treasury have come back and said our decision to go with that proposal has cost substantial amounts of money to the Commonwealth.
Okay.
And I said, okay. Well, what's their issue? And he said, well, they said we recommended option 1. I said, I don't think so. Even my memory at that stage, I said, I don't think we did. I think We recommended option 2. Second proposal was option 3. Last one was option 1, which Finance and Treasury both agreed was the best low-risk option.
Yeah.
He went, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. He said, I've got them by the balls.
Yeah. So you put up a proposal that they didn't take, and then they decided to take a different one, and it's blown up in their face a bit.
It wasn't bad. It was still a reasonable proposal, but it was our last choice option.
Yeah.
And they come back 10, 12, 15 years later and say, you screwed up. And I go, well, that's possible. That's not impossible at all. Because, you're working on what's going to happen in the market in the next 10, 12, 15 years.
And you can't predict everything.
You can't predict everything. So from that point of view, but I just found that was so interesting that even after I'd been here, and I hadn't been in defence for 6 or 7 or 8 years, and I hadn't been in contact with anybody in defence.
And that is out of the blue.
And out of the blue, I get a phone call on my phone, and the boss is ringing me, and he's acting secretary of the department.
Yeah.
And I go, holy crap. How do I remember this stuff?
Yeah, maybe you keep thinking about it. It's a big moment.
No. Look, a long, long time ago that I stopped thinking and worrying about it, From my point of view, hey, but the information, the long-term information for some reason comes back to me. Now, if you had to ask me what I did yesterday, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Or what I said to you when you rang me yesterday.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Can't remember it.
Very fuzzy.
Yeah. 10%, 15%.
I do remember having a conversation with you, but as far as
what
specifics, no. But I can remember something that's 25 years old or 30 years old.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Well, my mum did this when I came up here to live with her.
Yeah.
She was 95. She died at 97.
Yeah.
And her long-term memory was like a flash in the pan. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
She would go back and take you back into her childhood when she was 3, 4, 7, 12, when she first met Dad.
Can remember it all.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But ask her what she had for dinner last night. Not a clue.
I've got one last question for you.
Yep.
Now, you've been here for a while. I moved into this place, I think it was 2006.
Okay. Yeah.
Around then.
Round about.
Went away, sort of came back again. I think went away and then came back again.
Yep.
And it was a time when I kind of needed a place to stay, and you opened your home to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've still been here, and it's 2024.
Mm.
What is your mission now that you've been here for quite a while, and you've mentioned that a Garden of Eden sort of comes to mind?
Well, I've been trying. Probably. I had a Garden of Eden in Canberra. I lived there with a wonderful wife. I lived there with 4 beautiful children, and I had fantastic neighbours all around, and I mean that.
Makes a difference.
Oh, and even when I was doing all this stuff and I was working on some of these assignments I was given, I'd be working until 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get a taxi home, and I'd go home, I'd have a shower, I'd go to bed, and at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, I'd get up.
Do it all again.
And do it all again. I'd have me 2 hours or 3 hours sleep, and I'd be taxi back to work, and, we were working sort of 18, 20-hour days and just crazy. But in all that time, every time I went home, each day I would do something. I might only turn a shovel of dirt.
But you just did something.
But I did something so that I moved forward. Because I guess that's the project manager or the mentality that I was taught previously by some very good experienced trainers who were actually deputy secretaries in Department of Finance and Department of Treasury. And they got together and they were trying to build within the public service a degree of excellence.
Okay.
And one of the things they said was, you can't always do everything today, but if you do something today that moves you forward, this thing up here, this cerebellum says, I'm further advanced. And I guess that's what made me a good project manager.
Okay.
Well, I was. I'm not blowing any trumpets.
Sounds like you were from what you've had to do with, definitely.
Oh, look, mate. But the thing was, what it taught me was if you do a little bit more every day, that's why when Peter came, I was so happy today.
Yeah.
Because
one step closer.
It's another step forward.
Yeah.
And I don't care sometimes, like when I have the care people come here and they go, well, why have you got this on your list? Isn't this more important? I go, yeah, but I don't care. As long as we do that one thing, I feel better. I feel that I've moved forward. And as long as I feel that I've moved forward, that to me is more important than someone else saying, yeah, but it still looks like a shithole, Lyndon. You know, you still got all this crap all over your settee. You can't get to your...
Yeah.
And I go, well, I don't care.
One step closer to what you want, anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want it to look like this, by the way. I don't. And every time I try and do something, something else comes up.
Nature of life, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. And I know. And I just try, my attitude to life is each day I wake up, and sometimes I was frustrated yesterday at some stage, and probably more than one stage. But each day, at the end of the day, probably because of my therapy dogs, I go, tomorrow will be a better day. Tomorrow, the sun will come up. And a lot of people can't actually see when they become depressed or upset or whatever. They can't see the fact that the sun will come up. Now, I always know that on 99 out of 100 occasions, the sun's going to come up. You know how I know that?
Did the day before?
No, because on the 100th occasion when it don't come up, all you fuckers out there are in trouble. Is that a good way to finish?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
One last thing. If you had to pass on a question for someone else, the next person that I interview, what would you want me to ask them?
That's a difficult one.
Can be something simple. Can be deep and profound.
I'm thinking. It's not easy to come up with one thing, but how can I be kind? This is what I think. How can I be either a better neighbour or a better friend, or how can I be kind to one other person today?
All right, thank you. Really appreciate it, Lyndon.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure.